Each of them, in one way or another, had an idea of a possible end of the world, from nuclear war or global natural disasters to the completely unbelievable, like an invasion of insects turning people into beetles. But no one had imagined the world would be threatened with destruction over something like this. Park Jong-soo, riding in the car with his family, was really worried right now, and his little sister kept crying because of the sudden trip and because Dad wasn't with them. As it turned out, Dad couldn't evacuate from the disaster, and he sent a text saying the family should head to Busan, where he promised to meet them once things calmed down. But Jong-soo didn't go into detail and just said they'd meet later. And for now, little sister needs to calm down and not distract mom from driving, and grandma is worried too. Suddenly, the bike cut through the jam, drawing the refugees' attention.
Attention, citizens. He almost caught us.
We don't have time, we'll have to walk. Leave your vehicles in an orderly manner. Please follow the instructions of the military and police. Upon hearing this, Jong-soo's mom asked them to look after Dobin. They won't be able to find each other if they split up. At the same time, the officer kept repeating the script from the manual.
And then, out of nowhere, a tank flattened him.
Panic was quick to follow, and the organized crowd of people turned into a herd of animals, fighting to save their lives. In this kind of chaos, if you slip up by accident, you could easily get trampled. So Jong-soo picked up his little sister. The explosions going off behind them drove the crowd forward, but no one could have imagined that he was already nearby. The hero stood on a rise and watched as the vile animals pretending to be human tried to save their lives. Do you still hope to stay alive?
Disgusting.
Everyone believes anyone can die, but not him. Disgusting creatures. I'll destroy you all. With a cry, the hero charged into the attack. It was hard for Jong-soo in the raging crowd, with his little sister in his arms. So when another fleeing one inevitably flew into them, they lost Dobin's toy. The little girl started screaming and begging her brother to come back, but the guy understood their lives were far more important. However, when his little sister reminded him that Dad had given her this bunny, the guy changed his mind. Chon-soo sat Dobin on one of the cars, and she showed her brother which car the toy fell on. The guy told them not to lose sight of mom and grandma, and then he bolted against the flow of people after his sister's priceless artifact. When he looked under the car, he found it missing. But by then, the hero had already caught up with the people running from him. While the guy reached for the toy, the killer raised his huge sword. And at the moment when Jong-soo finally reached the bunny, the hero released a wave from his blade, striking everyone who tried to escape. A cacophony of sounds of destruction, explosions, and cries of agony filled the air. Climbing out from under the car, the guy found that he was surrounded only by corpses. Not a single hint of family.
No sister, no mom, no grandma.
After taking a step forward, Jong-soo realized he had stepped on something. That was Dobin's hand, crushed by the debris. After falling to his knees and frantically clearing the rubble, the guy found that all that was left of his little sister was a bloodstain. First, tears welled up in my eyes, and then the urge to vomit started to kick in. But Jong-soo quickly realized he wasn't alone. The hero noticed that the guy had beautiful eyes. Exactly the same ones as his. The eyes of a person who lost everything. Jong-soo started cursing the man who'd done all this, and grabbing whatever was at hand, he rushed at him, ready to kill him. But the fantasy killer just grabbed an ordinary person with one hand and squeezed his throat. In a gasping voice, Jong-soo kept forcing out a threat that he would kill the bastard.
How will you do that?
With those words, the hero pierced the guy with his giant sword. Blood gushed out in a stream, and as he lost consciousness, the boy asked his sister, his parents, and his grandmother for forgiveness, for not being able to avenge their killer. But after some time, in the middle of the endless darkness, a voice began calling out to Jong-soo. Gradually, he realized he could open his eyes, and saw before him a sorceress joyfully welcoming the hero who had been summoned to another world to save it. Have you ever wondered what happens to the heroes of isekai after they defeat evil and return home? To answer this question, let's go back a little. Who would have imagined that an ordinary schoolboy, living an ordinary life, while crossing the street on a green light, would be hit dead by a truck, and then be reborn in another world? Of course, at first it was hard for the guy. He kept crying all the time and only thought about how to get back home to mommy. But the hero of isekai can't help but have a goal. There is only one path. And soon the boy learned there was a way to go back. Then he wiped his nose and became a hero, slashing demons for world peace. And the dead bodies rose up to the heavens, and blood flowed like a river. And the young man gradually discovered how precious real comrades are, and what true courage means. Over time, the weak, insecure schoolboy became the hero the whole world counted on. But there's no path without losses. The guy had to learn the pain of spending. Having lived through that, the hero learned to meet fate's challenge with dignity. Well, after a year spent in a strange world, the journey of a schoolboy named Kim Min-soo was nearing its end. And so he decided to write a letter to his parents. He didn't know yet that it wouldn't reach the addressee. His writing was interrupted by his comrades, who suggested they begin the final battle. The guy stood up and slowly cracked open the gate. Before going in, he smiled at his comrades. Min-soo couldn't take them with him into this battle, because that's the hero's fate. Kim entered the crypt, where he met the strongest being in this world. And soon, the ringing of the bell spread through the city with the joyful news of the demon's death and the salvation of the world. In honor of the heroes, a celebratory dinner was held at the royal palace. But despite the general joy, Min-soo was gloomier than usual. The priestess supported the hero, because after his incredible adventure, tomorrow he would finally return home. When the girl hugged the guy, the feelings that had been building in him for a whole year finally poured out. Despite defeating the demon, deep down Min-soo was still an ordinary man who missed his family. One of the squad members asked whether the hero had ever thought about staying in this world a while longer. But the priestess sided with the guy who'd been dreaming of going home all this time. Of course, the team was upset about the upcoming farewell, but the girl took matters into her own hands, just like Min-soo's hand. The priestess was sure that after all the feats and saving the world, the hero would return home to a bright and happy life. 3 weeks later, in the Kansuga district of Seoul, Kim Min-soo realized the priestess was deeply mistaken. The hero who saved another world was unable to save himself. When the guy came home, a stranger opened the door for him, the new owner of the apartment. Min-soo was gone for only 8 months, and everything changed. His mother was killed when she was handing out leaflets about her missing son. The father couldn't cope with losing his family, which he blamed himself for entirely, and took his own life. In his suicide note, he asked the authorities to place an ad for his missing son. Despite this tragedy, the police couldn't find a single lead and decided the boy had run away from home on his own. Apart from his personal tragedy, Min-soo was also expelled from school with no right of reinstatement. His friends were also busy with their own lives and turned their backs on him. There was no one who could or would help the guy who was in a tough spot. And when Min-soo went to see his uncle, he got slapped. On top of that, he even kicked the guy, since he blamed his useless nephew for his brother's death. The aunt barely dragged her husband away, and their daughter advised Min-soo to just leave and never come back. So the once majestic hero, who was greeted with honors, ended up on the street with a pittance in his pocket.
Fate was cruel to him.
When others needed help, he answered and saved many lives, but when he came home, he became an outcast. While mulling over life, the cocky bull, after bumping into Min-soo, started picking a fight with him. But the girl from Gopher, bursting into laughter, decided that such a loser didn't even deserve a beating. And Kingpin wanted to show some nobility and let the loser go. But at that moment, the guy realized what he truly wanted. In his heart, a gnawing urge clearly arose to bring everyone around him a pure, genuine, all-encompassing sorrow. Unaware of what the schoolboy was muttering under his breath, Bichara lost his temper and was already about to beat the guy up. But he stretched out his hand and called to his sword. The hoodlum froze in surprise at what this loser was carrying. And his girl just kept cracking up. But not for long. A second later, only a hand was left of the thug, and everything else had turned into bloody mince. When it dawned on the blood-soaked fool, the street filled with hysterical screams. A suit of armor began to appear around Minsu, who was wiping away tears. He's a hero and shouldn't suffer, especially alone. Having raised his sword, the knight from another dimension decided to bring a little justice to this world, making all people suffer. With all his might, the hero spun his sword 360 degrees, causing a devastating explosion in the city center. Usually, an isekai ends with the words, "The world was saved, and the heroes lived happily ever after." But that day, Seoul's Kansogu district ceased to exist. Well, as for what happened next, we already saw it. About a year after the hero's return, the government was completely destroyed. Kim Min-soo, known as the Sword Hero, was recognized as the strongest being, but the trouble didn't end there. After the hero of the sword, the other heroes returned to this world too, joined him, and took over all of Korea. The returnees divided up the country among themselves and turned everyone into slaves. Above Jeju Island hung a giant eye, reporting everything to its master, the golem hero. People slept in rows right on the Kurtpechkas, but not everyone was in Morpheus's realm. One of the survivors dreamed of death. Her friend asked her not to jinx it, because they had fled to Jeju on purpose to stay alive. But the other girl saw no point in life like that. Then suddenly the doors swung open, and a giant hand with a speaker crawled into the room.
Time to work.
Please hurry up if you don't want to die. Please hurry up if you don't want to die. Sleepy and exhausted people headed for the exit, accompanied by other hands. As usual, everyone was gathered in the square. The giant hands formed something like a staircase before the Lord, who calmly climbed onto his pedestal before his subjects. This is Golem's hero, Jung Sung-woo. With a snap of his fingers, giant speakers with a microphone materialized right out of the mud. And now a new day has dawned, sir. Today, as planned, the women gather food, and the men keep working on building the Sage Tower. Hey, why do you guys look so wiped out? As if I'm forcing you. A girl dreaming of death muttered under her breath that there were no volunteers here. But fortunately, Golem's hero didn't hear it. You should be grateful to me. If you'd ended up in blood or faith, you'd have been turned to mince long ago by religious fanatics. But instead of thanks, Sun Woo heard only silence. I see you've completely let your guard down. Jung Sung-woo folded his fingers as if he were about to flick someone on the forehead. People already knew what it meant, so they panicked and ran. When the golem hero flicked at nothing, his muddy servants copied the move after their master. The burst slipping from his fingers caught the men, piercing them clean through. Right in front of Salmon, who wanted death, this morning there had been her friend, who begged her not to jinx disaster. Without hurrying, the girl closed the dying woman's eyes. You stupid animals, get to work. And a little more enthusiasm. Tamed gatherers, strangely enough, were gathering. Salmon was slowly peeling mandarin after mandarin, when suddenly her basket was filled by the old lady. The girl didn't understand why. And the old woman, after learning of the death of Salmon's best friend, suggested that the girl go for a walk and rest for at least half an hour. The old lady herself spent her whole life picking tangerines, so she'll be able to meet double the quota without much effort. Salmon thanked Grandma and took one fruit for the road, and the old lady reminded her about the golem eye in the sky. And just a couple of minutes later, the beauty reached the sea, since it was nearby. She always felt calmer watching the waves. But as soon as Salmon ate one tangerine slice, her feelings burst out, and the girl started crying. If she had been up front, if not for the crowing yesterday, maybe this would. The sudden rustling frightened the girl, and a man in military uniform emerged from the bushes. He said he was starving, and then Salmon gave him all the crumbs she had. The man turned out to be a soldier from the surviving unit, hiding on a ship nearby. All the crew members, like him, were worn out by hunger. And the soldier asked the girl to save them by bringing some food. Salmon was afraid that if the golem hero found out about this, then...
Stop.
After thinking for a moment, the beauty asked if the soldiers would be able to deal with that bastard if they recovered their strength. The man confirmed that once they found supplies, they planned to face the golem hero and defeat him. Salmon glanced at the eye. It was looking the other way and moving in a set pattern. If we run straight through the forest, we can make it before the golem turns toward the beach. After thinking it over, the beauty promised to get as much food as would be needed. And after a while, she'd come back with a whole basket of tangerines, thinking that her friend had been right. No matter what happens, you have to stay alive and not lose hope. Determined to fight to the very end, Salmon ran out onto the shore, where the soldiers were supposed to be waiting for her. However, they weren't the only ones there. The golem hero was there too, whose giant hands crushed the soldiers. And in the next moment, the stump grabbed the traitor too, the one who had turned against him. Salmon couldn't understand how he found out about their plan, since Oko was looking the other way.
Oh, did you think he was here alone?
Canceling stealth mode. In the sky, hundreds, maybe even thousands of eyes appeared. The golem hero couldn't hold back his laughter. This is funny, why isn't the girl having fun? Salmon couldn't take it anymore and started insulting that bastard. What do I have to do with this? Blame your own worthlessness. If you don't like something, then be a hero and beat me. When we were suffering, no one felt our pain. In anger, Yu's son clenched his fist, and the girl, forgetting the pain, let out a piercing scream, begging for anyone at all to come help. And then the heavens, as if hearing her prayer, sent forth a bright beam of light that struck beside them. And when the dust cleared, a guy with a spear appeared where the crushing landing had been. Jong-soo looked at the hero, the girl being squeezed by a giant hand, and several similar fists squeezing bloody corpses. You're in the loop, explain what's going on. As soon as the girl was about to speak, the golem hero cut her off and ordered the guy to get off his territory. Salmon immediately realized that this bastard didn't know that spearman, which meant he wasn't connected to the sword hero. Realizing this was her chance, the girl shouted that this red-haired devil, the sword hero's lackey, had taken over Jeju and was killing people. The golem hero immediately started clenching his fist.
I've heard enough.
I'll just ask one question. That girl is telling the truth. The bastard didn't even deny it. And so, Young-soo immediately got into a fighting stance. Tens of giant hands prepared to seize the unknown hero, and hundreds of eyes floating in the sky fired deadly beams. But the guy, spinning his spear, shredded the muddy weak arms and dodged the shots. Then, in one burst, he closed in on the enemy. He put up a block, getting ready to defend. But Young-soo just chopped off the bastard's hands. Falling to his knees, Wu's son howled in pain, cursing the stranger. But he quickly got knocked in the teeth and realized he'd lost. Su-min couldn't believe her eyes. Someone strong enough to defeat the golem hero who destroyed the entire fleet has appeared. The stranger was interested in only one thing.
Hero of the sword.
Is that the knight who walks in white armor? Sun Yu howled that he knew nothing. And with the next swing, he lost his leg. Young-soo warned that for every I don't know, he'd cut off a limb.
And repeated his question. The hero in white armor. Is this the sword hero?
The loser answered yes. Then Jong-soo asked where he was now. And hearing no reply, he cut off another of the freak's legs, turning him into a killer worm. After that, the spearman asked again. But instead of answering, the golem's hero started pleading for help. Then Jong-soo cleared things up. He'll kill the bastard either way. But if he answers the questions, he'll die quickly and without pain. But in that very same second, the golems that Sun Wu had summoned for help all rushed at the spearman. Su-min, who had just found hope, was horrified by how powerful the golem hero really was. And while the giant summoned creatures were tearing the stranger apart, a pair of hands gently scooped up the killer worm and lifted it into the air. Then, before the bleeding son of Wu, His heroic years flashed by in an instant. After ending up in another world, he wasn't planning to save anyone. But the girl convinced the guy that after their world was destroyed, the demon would head to the neighboring world, where the hero came from, and destroy it. Fighting for his land, Wu's son wasn't after recognition or glory. All he wanted was just a couple of words like thank you and welcome back. But his father was not happy to see the prodigal son and drove the boy out of the house. At the social assistance center, they told him they weren't allowed to help anyone over 18. He couldn't get a normal job because he was considered underage until 21. And then the returning hero decided to take what was his by force. But now, when the world belonged to him, the bastard didn't want to die. While the idiot was lost in memories, the spearman took out all the golems. He won't let that bastard leave alive. It's a shame, of course, that the golem maker won't pass this on to the others. But the same fate awaits them. Seeing the enemy's terrifying, utterly horrifying eyes, Wu's son unleashed his strongest attack. All the golems focused their energy in the eye to unleash a crushing shot. But Jong-soo had his own advantages too. His arm was traced with runes that activated the lightning elemental. The next instant, the supersonic throw sent the spear flying. It met the death ray, but not only did it not break apart, it also reached the eye and pierced it clean through, destroying the other summon creations. Then it reached the golem hero, piercing his chest. So the maniac who, with superpowers, seized Jeju and destroyed the entire fleet, was killed by an unknown hero. And somewhere in a neighboring world, the rescued girl, together with other adventurers, was overseeing the construction of a statue to the great golem hero who saved their world. And all the inhabitants of this dimension bowed their heads in prayer for the well-being and happiness of their savior. And they didn't know what a monster he had become, and what end he met. After Sun Wu died, all his creations crumbled back into mud, and for the first time since the sword hero appeared on Jeju Island, peaceful times had come. People were freed, families reunited, and there was no end to the happiness and joy, but not for everyone. For Jong-soo, there was no place or time where his family could reunite again. As he was lost in memories, he heard a strange rustling and almost flattened a girl in a jacket. Soo-min said that people wanted to see their liberator, and suggested that their hero come out to meet them. But Jong-soo wasn't going to do that. What won't calm a worker is that the hero killed one of his own kind. On the contrary, they'll just get even more scared. And the spearman, honestly, isn't interested in calming everyone down. The girl noted that he was a kind-hearted guy, since he thinks first of other people's feelings. Yeah, let him think whatever he wants. Jong-soo won't see her again anyway. But before saying goodbye, the beauty decided to ask. Is Kopschnik really going to kill all the heroes? In Jong-soo's calm voice, a thick note of fury flickered. He'll destroy anyone who joined the sword hero. The girl immediately understood it was revenge. So she asked to join the unit, so she could get revenge too. After staying silent for a couple of seconds, Jong-soo still decided to ask. That girl is totally nuts. However, Soo-min kept standing her ground. In a fight, she's useless of course, but she does know where each of the heroes is. She saw it all with her own eyes, because she made that journey to Jeju as a refugee all the way from Seoul. She knows not only which heroes rule the different regions, but also the specific abilities of some of the isekai arrivals. For example, the sword hero is in Seoul, and to get there, you have to find somewhere to eat and sleep, ask the locals, find out the best way to get to the place you need, and so on. Soo-min will take care of all these things. In short, the girl offered to be the hero's guide. Well, like Gollum to Frodo, just without the craziness. Jong-soo thought for a moment and asked why the girl needed all this. She could have stayed here and lived safely. Then Soo-min took out a photo of a happy family and replied that she hated the heroes with all her heart, because of whom she had lost her loved ones. But since she doesn't have that ability, the girl wanted to do everything she could to help the spearman, who was capable of taking revenge. With that, the pair made an agreement. The hero said he wouldn't stay because of her and set off. And the girl quietly toddled after him. Soo-min returned to the ruins where she had left the hero, preparing his spear for the next battle. She took out a notebook and asked where they were going. To the stronger hero that's closer, or better start with the weaker one, but farther away. Without hesitation, Jong-soo replied that he was interested in the one he could kill the fastest. The girl knew it. In this case, they were to face the heroine of the Sea Dragon and her terrifying beast, which alone destroyed the Pacific Fleet. The heroine he serves is truly strong, and her combat techniques are graceful. The two of them killed many people, including Sumin's mother. By the time she had almost reached Chiju, the spearman interrupted the story and asked for less drama when talking about heroes. Don't talk about their atrocities as if they were the Force. Their opponents are killers. The dragon heroine must die. And what she did is no longer interesting. What matters is that for a trip like this, they'll need some kind of boat. But Sumin had already arranged everything. The surviving sailors are repairing one of the ships and getting ready to help. After some time, lined up in a row, the badly battered sailors and captain greeted the hero. And one day later, in the coastal waters of the South Sea, at the very center of the waterspout, the sea monster sensed the approach of its enemies. But the heroine asked her little one not to worry. Because soon all these people will die. On one of Jeju's beaches, a sailor buried all his fallen comrades. The captain came to warn us that there are 2 hours left until departure. A grim young man honestly admitted that he doubts the captain's decision to help the spearman. Just because someone killed the golem hero doesn't mean they can take on the sea heroine. And anyway, it's not even known whether this stranger is on their side. Sailor had no doubt that even if everything went off plan, they could still survive and make it back to shore. But the idea of killing the sword hero seemed unimaginably absurd. As if they're willingly going back to hell. However, the captain saw it differently. This guy killed the golem hero and is about to take out the rest of those bastards. That's enough to trust him. The captain lost 30 sailors who were like sons to him. And now, if the sailor is destined to meet them in the next world, then he can say he didn't give up, he fought to the very end, and their deaths were not in vain. If by some miracle the spearman turns out stronger than the sword hero, then the death of these guys will mark the beginning of Korea's liberation. The captain thought that was reason enough to voluntarily go to hell. An hour later in the South Sea. In one of the cabins, Sumin sketched out for the hero what his opponents would probably look like. Jong-soo was sure he could easily handle the earthworm and...
What's this? Stick, little cucumber?
The girl asked not to nitpick, since this is just a schematic image. The main thing she wanted to get across. Unlike the other heroes, Jong-soo will now face 2 opponents. The spearmen began to worry that they would attack from 2 sides, but the girl had never seen anything like it. Although there are 2 of them, the heroine always stands on the dragon, and it never moves without her orders. So, most likely in their duo, the heroine is the brains, and the dragon handles the brute force. Jong-soo asked about the skills, and Su-min described how she saw that dragon fighting the military. Then the beast breathed fire and flipped ships over like toys, while the heroine, in turn, defended herself against attacks aimed at her. Jong-soo had to admit, they had a pretty interesting tactic, and dealing with these opponents would be
not that easy.
The girl wanted to suggest a plan, but the alarm cut her off. Stepping out onto the deck, the pair saw the sailors scrambling to take their places. Jong-soo stopped one of them to have him outline the situation. The gunner quickly said that an unidentified object had just been spotted on radar. Before this, the captain had been told there were 300, but now the number had climbed past 400 unidentified objects moving straight at them. Jong-soo took position at the ship's bow and saw hundreds of shadows approaching them underwater. The machine gunner opened fire in advance, the sea was dyed crimson, and on the surface floated dead fish? The girl didn't understand what that absurd Aquaman attack was. But Jang-soo guessed the fish were charging at them because they were just afraid of something bigger. At that moment, a whirlpool formed beside the ship, and from it emerged a sea dragon, with the heroine Shin-soo on its head. The monster opened its jaws, preparing to destroy the ship with a single shot. The captain ordered an evasive maneuver, but Jong-soo told them not to move. The helmsman, not understanding what he was up to, the spearman wanted to disobey, but the captain firmly decided to trust the boy and ordered the anchor dropped. Sailors had no choice but to obey, and the ship began to stop right in front of the heroine. The sea dragon let out its earth-shaking roar. And Jong-soo used a summon and called forth a protective spear. The weapon, wrapped in a red glow, now looked like a 12-pointed cross. As soon as he grabbed it, the hero activated a protection spell, and armor made of red light appeared in front of the ship. Gathering his strength, he told everyone to stay down if they wanted to survive. The blue flame, after colliding with the red shield, really couldn't break through it and began to scatter in all directions. For about a minute, Jong-soo successfully held back the dragon's assault, but even a simple sailor understood that, because he was protecting the ship, the hero couldn't even move, let alone attack. Then the captain ordered the gun to fire at the dragon's head. All available ship cannons have locked onto the target. At the command, a powerful volley of rockets was launched, arcing past the clash of dragonfire with the shield and flying at the enemy. But the heroine just cast Atlas's shield, which easily blocked the projectiles. The captain ordered us not to lose heart, to keep attacking with all available weapons, and not to spare ammunition. The ship launched another volley of missiles, and the hero holding back the dragon admitted that the sailors were helping him quite well. As soon as they forced the heroine to lower her shield, the firepower began to weaken noticeably. This proved the theory that the dragon and the heroine shared one mana pool between them. Now it's clear that this battle will be a war of attrition. Thinking about it, Jong-soo slowly started moving forward. Seeing the signs of progress, the heroine understood that he had noticed the weakness in their duo. And if that's the case, then the beauty spun the trident and, tossing it into the air, decided to get rid of the troublesome interference. By the time the weapon landed in the girl's hands, it had already been infused with mana. Atlant's charged trident shot toward the ship in the next second, destroying rockets along the way. Breaking through the explosions, the gun was supposed to slam into Jong-soo's shield. But the heroine just flicked her fingers and changed the trident's flight path. The beauty's hands began to move, weaving graceful magical threads, followed by the direction of the trident, flying through the ship's cannons, soldiers and the ship itself. One of the sailors, realizing the heroine was aiming at the captain, shielded him with his own body. But that didn't help. It pierced the captain too. The weapon flew off the bridge and headed toward the spearman's back. Shin-soo, in effect, put him in checkmate. Dragon flame on one side, and a trident on the other. This is the end of the nameless hero. Blood was gushing out in all directions. But this blood did not belong to Jong-soo. Sailor, who didn't trust the spearman, sacrificed himself and held back the trident with his body. Even if he was just an ordinary man. But, like his captain, he buried many comrades before he willingly stepped into hell. The weapon was reaching for Jong-soo closer and closer. But the sailor, through sheer force of will, managed to stop the attack. The heroine ran out of mana charged into the trident. Because of it, she couldn't keep control. And the dying sailor asked the spearman to make sure these sacrifices were not in vain. After that, he collapsed, leaving the trident beside Jong-soo. He thanked the guy for the sacrifice and, grabbing the weapon, activated the ice element. The hero of the sea dragon, in the underwater city full of fish and sea dwellers, a girl who clearly didn't belong to this world appeared out of nowhere. It was the sea dragon's world.
Atlas.
I see you're in our kingdom for the first time. Welcome to my domain, hero. You're reacting so calmly to what's happening. You must have already been told what you need to do to get back home. Shin-soo confirmed the guess, but she wasn't too sure of herself. Then the incredibly handsome king handed the heroine the trident that had been passed down through generations of the royal family. The girl accepted the gift, which was quite heavy for her. Your trident means you're my hero now. And I place my life in your hands. A majestic ruler of Atlanta knelt on one knee before the girl he just met. Let me serve you, hero of the sea dragon. After kissing the girl's hand, he promised to protect his heroine from anything that stood in the way. But now the king's gift has fallen into enemy hands. That instantly set the heroine off, and she demanded the trident be returned at once. Yeah, of course I'll give it back.
Stick your head in.
The dragon kept attacking the ship with flames, but the spearman deactivated the protective runes. With a trident imbued with ice, he hurled it at his enemies with all his might, freezing the dragon's flames. Seeing the power of the ice, the heroine ordered them not to waste mana on attack and to focus on defense. The monster obeyed and instantly snapped its jaws shut, and the girl, dropping to her knees, summoned a giant 5-tier shield, which even the demon pterodactyl had once been unable to break through. If only. The trident Chonsu threw pierced the first layer, then the second. On the third one, the heroine was already starting to panic, but when the trident slammed into the last step of the block, she let out a sigh of relief because, after weathering a blow like that, they'll be able to focus on the attack again. However, the spearman had already vanished from the ship and gotten right up close to the dragon. The heroine realized that the enemy's technique wasn't meant for attack, but to clear a path. The girl tried to lead the dragon away, but a sweeping strike landed squarely along the monster stuck in the ice. The force was so immense it pierced the monster clean through and swept through the heroine, who, realizing her end was near, once again confessed her love to the Sea King. The moment the beauty's last words slipped from her lips, her sliced body flew into the abyss of her lover's innards. Yes, they fell in love in Atlanta too. When the legendary demon pterodactyl was slain, the heroine almost cried tears of joy. When suddenly her loyal sea dragon turned into his human form and caught the beauty before she could fall into the water. The evil fate that threatened the Tsar's homeland was destroyed, thanks to a brave and incredibly beautiful girl, whom he, before he could finish speaking, the ruler kissed her, the one he had managed to love in such a short time. Tears welled up in the heroine's eyes, because she didn't want to go back and live far from her beloved. But the king actually kept his royal promise and is no longer bound by an oath, which means he can follow her not as a sea dragon, but as her man. Upon learning this, the subjects were shocked by their ruler's decision, because the heroine's world was diametrically opposite, and the transition could have spelled disaster for the king's health. The hero adapted just fine, so why can't I? Besides, I chose a successor and fulfilled my mission. Now you're king. No, now I want to spend the rest of my life with the one I love. In front of the portal to the heroine's world, the lovers exchanged rings and boldly stepped forward, toward their happiness. But ahead of them, only trouble awaited. The human world had a strong impact on the Sea King, and it was becoming harder and harder for him to maintain his human form. The woman worried about her husband, but he hid that something was going wrong, while their happiness kept quietly falling apart. One day when she came home, the girl found that her husband was in a transitional form between human and dragon, and she immediately understood the suffering he had gone through following her. The beauty rushed to her beloved. She suggested dropping everything and going to a remote island far from people, where he wouldn't need to keep up a human appearance. Deciding they needed no one but each other, the lovers boarded a ship that was to take them as far from land as possible. The heroine's husband held on until the very end, but then he found himself in the middle of the sea. Sorry, I can't take it anymore. A sudden transformation inevitably destroyed the ship, and the government mistook the lovers for resurrected heroes. A bounty was put on their heads, and the navy was sent in, only to be wiped out with ease. Looking at the burning ships, the girl felt no sorrow. She didn't dream of conquering or destroying the world. She just wanted to be with the one she loved. But to ordinary people, they're now villains. In another world, the Sea King fought to protect his heroine. Now it was her turn. However, as we already know, there was no happily ever after. In downtown Seoul, in Gwangwamun Square, the sword hero sat aimlessly. Then suddenly, Sung Jin Woo, the return hero, approached him. The heroes of the Sea Dragon Golem were killed by some rookie. Look, I even got the photos.
Now she had hope.
So, your end could come soon. Don't you want to do something? Kim Min-soo, after looking at the photos, calmly stood in front of Jun Woo. Now that sounds more like you.
Spear hero.
In the faraway world, almost all the spears were in their places, except for number 5. The protective spear, like a cross. The sorceress understood that the hero had summoned him to take revenge. The girl ordered the blacksmiths to be roused and to be ready to restore the spear, no matter what shape it came back in. That's the least they can do to repay saving their world. Honestly, Jung-soo wasn't interested in heroics. From the very first day, as soon as he found himself in this new world, he devoted himself entirely to training. He trained until he became even stronger than necessary. One day, the sorceress asked the guy to stop. We could have moved on to the next stage already. But the spearman seized the girl's hand painfully and threw her away. He'll decide for himself when it's time to stop. Jong-soo kept saying over and over that he was too weak and couldn't deal with that bastard yet. Dabin died because he was a weakling. After some time, the summoned hero began taking on tasks, but treated them as a stepping stone to gaining power. Fiercely attacking with his spear, he cut down goblins by the dozens while his companions watched in horror at this berserker. Of course, you might think they were worried about the number of enemies surrounding the guy. But by then, Jong-soo could already cleave several creatures in half with a single blow. He fought so fiercely that even the spear couldn't always hold up. The goblin chief crept up behind the hero and smashed him on the head with a club, sending Jong-soo flying to the broken piece of his spear. The bastards have already started to think they've beaten the uninvited guest. But when Jung-soo with bloodshot eyes saw the goblins. That bastard. The boy, grabbing a spear shard, shot past the damned creatures in a deadly whirlwind, cutting down everyone in his path. In the end, Jong-soo lunged at the chief and stabbed him with maximum bloodlust. That's why the sidekicks always dreaded going out on raids with the hero. He screamed like a rabid beast and tore his enemies apart as if he saw in them the one he hated for personal reasons. Even goblin armies have never scared this maniac. The real problem was deep inside Jong-soo. Even when severed enemy corpses lay in pools of blood beneath his feet, the hero still saw and heard the voices of dead relatives, blaming him for not being able to save anyone. One night, the sorceress woke to the sound of a spear being sharpened. Having taken the healing ointment, she offered the hero her help and rubbed his powerful back, crisscrossed with fresh wounds. Then the girl asked the guy why he was fighting so fiercely. The sorceress thought the hero's family would be upset if he came back so badly injured. That night, she learned that Jong-soo had no one left. The cutie was horrified, but now couldn't understand why all this eagerness, if the hero didn't want to go back home. There is a man I have to kill. Now the girl is even more confused. There's hardly anyone stronger than the hero, sir, and even if all this is for revenge, you still need to take care of your health.
No, he's strong. I have to surpass him.
I'll become stronger than that bastard. I'll cut off his limbs so he can't even move. And then I'll leave him under the scorching sun and cut off a piece of flesh every day. As soon as the wounds start to heal, I'll inflict new injuries on him. I won't let him die, even of hunger. He will live, because I'll feed the bastard his own meat. Yes, exactly. He will answer for his sins. I'll do this as slowly as I can. Everyone could tell there was something wrong with this guy. And many people were a little afraid of him. But soon, he slew the Demon King. You're especially strong compared to the other heroes. Wonder what the next hero will be like, the one who comes in 100 years.
Miracle elixir?
Why is he using it on a demon?
I knew it. Do you want to become a demon?
I just want to practice with you one more time.
Stop. Huh?
After several attempts.
No. Countless attempts.
The Demon King wailed in agony, begging for death. But Chuanzu didn't care about the pleas. Even his companions were already getting scared. Then, out of nowhere, the sorceress hugged the guy from behind and asked him to stop. She promised this world would help him get revenge. You don't need to cross the line for that. As long as Lord Hero stays human. After Chuanzu returned to his world and started summoning and dismissing weapons, the blacksmiths worked day and night so the spears would always be in perfect condition. And the sorceress, who was controlling the process, prayed that after the revenge, Lord Hero would not become a monster. In his world, when Chunku was returning to the ship over the ice, he saw another shadow in the shape of the Sword Hero, mocking his victories. But even Shiza's guy couldn't shake his resolve. I don't care whether he becomes a monster or not. Just kill that bastard. After shaking off the glitches and reaching the ship, the spearman hoisted the cannon onto the deck one by one, then skillfully climbed up himself. At that moment, Salmon was convinced that this man really had enough power to wipe out all the heroes. Chunku asked how many sailors survived. But the girl silently shook her head.
She searched the whole ship.
There are no survivors, and without a crew, you can't sail on. The girl figured maybe the hero has teleportation scrolls or the ability to fly, or at least a spell that summons a flying pink elephant. But Chunku replied gloomily that he was not a magician. And Salmon took on the role of their guide, and has to get their asses out of here. However, of course, the girl didn't know how to pilot the ship. Yeah, I'm not sure you can do anything. I thought you'd be useful, so I brought you along. The girl got a little upset. She's not a magician either. Even if I knew how to pilot a ship, how would I? Her scream was cut off by the crackling of the ice, which was slowly melting and releasing the ship from its trap.
We need to rest.
You may not be tired, but I need to recover my strength after the battle. Having said that, Chuanzu left. The girl was infuriated by the spear hero's arrogance. But in some ways, he was right. So far, she's been completely useless. Late that night in the dark holds, armed with a flashlight, Su Min began looking for the ship's operating instructions. Suddenly, she heard some rustling. And since the hero was supposed to be resting, she thought it could be one of the survivors. But when Su Min looked out into the corridor, she saw the spearmen dragging the bodies of the dead sailors. It was some kind of extremely weird vacation. Chongzu stacked the bodies of those fallen in battle on the main deck. It was the least he could do for the sailors. After all, the boy's father also served on the ship. And most likely, it fell at the hero's hands long ago. Chunku understood perfectly well that without sacrificing these people, he would never have been able to reach the heroine of the sea dragon. But still, tears ran down his face. And he apologized to all the fallen for not being able to protect them. All Chuanzu hoped for was that in the next life, those soldiers would end up in a world where they wouldn't have to sacrifice their lives. The girl watching the spearmen pressed her palms together and also honored the fallen with a prayer. And at dawn, guests arrived. A military helicopter hovered over the ship. Inside were soldiers from the restored government and the head of the Hero Suppression Unit, Choi Jong-wook, who declared the start of the operation to detain the hero of the uprising.
Stay alert.
We don't know if they're on our side. If his goal is to pay for the territory of the other heroes, then you.
Don't worry.
We will be extremely careful. Young-soo asked his companion whether she tried to contact anyone by radio. And of course the answer was no, but still. A helicopter hovering above them suggested that, somehow, news of the Water Dragon hero's murder had leaked out. Su Min supposed that these people could very well be lackeys of other heroes, since many had joined them out of fear or a thirst for power. Hearing this, Young-soo prepared his spear. Then Choi prepared his secret weapon.
Mouth.
This is the head of the Hero Combat Division speaking. This is the organization of the restored Korean government. Lower the ladder for you.
Be ready to climb up.
Chon-soo had heard nothing about the restored government and asked his guide for advice. The girl herself, of course, hadn't personally dealt with this organization, but there were rumors on Chiju. It was said that this organization was founded by surviving politicians and military leaders who organized a guerrilla war against the heroes. Jong-soo understood that if this were true, then these people would benefit from cooperating with a hero who dreamed of killing his own kind. So the spearmen decided to hear them out and boarded the ship with the girl. Jung-wook asked them to sit down. The helicopter door closed behind them, and the unit leader ordered them to set off. The helicopter quickly flew off in an unknown direction. Soo-min was extremely freaked out by the soldiers in full gear, but the man in the sharp business suit was even more suspicious. Jong-soo asked where they were heading. Choi immediately pulled out cigarettes. At Choi's signal, the soldiers pulled out handcuffs, and a frightened Soo-min hurried to explain that the spearman had already killed 2 heroes and was on the human side. She suggested not doing anything stupid and calmly talking it over. But as soon as the seat lifted, a pair of gun barrels were pointed at her. Jong Uk said it only takes a second for a soldier to pull the trigger and blow her skull apart. There are no sides, no people, no heroes. There's a government and a hero they know nothing about and can't trust. For the restored government, this pair isn't important people, but prisoners. Hey, how fast do you think I could blow the heads off everyone holding guns and hijack a helicopter without killing the pilot? Why do you think bullets would hurt me? Why the hell is that idiot provoking them? The bullets will definitely hurt Soo-min. The girl thought, but tactfully kept quiet. At that moment, Cho unfastened his bulletproof vest and showed his suicide vest. Bullets may not kill the hero, but a bomb certainly can. The girl was already on the verge of a fart attack, unlike Jung-soo. Seeing from the spearman's reaction that he wasn't afraid of the explosion either, the leader assumed that even if the hero didn't die from it, he would clearly be injured. Plus, they're now 600 meters above the ocean. If a spearman falls from that height, no matter how tough he is, that's definitely one more injury. And even if he survives the blast and the fall, does the guy really think he can swim to shore without even knowing which way to paddle? That cowardly tactic of throwing out logical arguments started to piss Jung-soo off. And my companions, please not to act tough, only poured fuel on the ass-fire. At some point, Choi cut the girl off and said that, judging by the spearman's reaction, he had no counterargument, so she should stop acting up. Why did the pillars freeze up? We need to keep tying it together. The ruins of the destroyed city greeted the helicopter with a silent echo. Landed on one of the surviving rooftops, the head of the Hero Public Safety Commission emerged from the chopper and successfully completed the mission of capturing the hero of the uprising, delivering him to the rebuilt government's headquarters. But Jung-woo knew it was too early to celebrate anything and ordered the guests taken to the interrogation room. The chief did not rule out the possibility that the spearman was just bait, sent to them by the heroes of the sword. And while he was lighting a cigarette, trying to see all the possible futures, the drone kept watching everything that was happening there. But the problem was that this drone also belonged to one of the heroes. Under Big Brother's watchful eye, the rebellion's heroes and his companion were led to a place they knew nothing about. To break free, it would take Jong-soo no more than a second. And if you go by the sound of their footsteps, it'll take another couple of seconds for the 4 soldiers escorting him. Just 3 moments, and the spearman could be free again. As he seriously thought it over, Jong-soo stopped, and the barrels of automatic rifles were suddenly pointed at him. I followed you not out of fear, but only to get to shore.
Come on, move it, scum.
You'll open your mouth in the interrogation room. The soldier was so scared that his trembling finger barely didn't squeeze the trigger. The hero pulled tight the chain linking the handcuffs. But Soo-min asked not to get worked up. These soldiers clearly don't mean them any harm. They're very scared, but they still keep just following orders. And besides, these are soldiers of the restored government, at war with the same heroes Jung-soo was going to kill. The girl understood that they all had a common enemy, and they shouldn't be fighting each other. Upon hearing this, the spearman lowered his hands, and the soldiers put away their rifles, after which they continued escorting them. When Soo-min was in the interrogation room, they finally untied her blindfold. Soon, Choi Jong-wook joined the girl. He already knew the beauty had no strength left. That's exactly why I wanted to hear from her first, to find out what kind of hero the uprising really is, and to understand why she's helping him. Soo-min replied that it's hard to call that guy a hero. He's very different from the others. The spearman has a real hatred for the sword hero deep inside, and he's also repeatedly said he'll kill all of that bastard's lackeys. After lighting up, Jung-wook realized it matched the data they had. The reason this character appeared so late is that all this time, he was in a parallel world. Hatred and anger toward the sword hero, that's good. And if you leave out the details, it turned out they really did have a common enemy. After working through the chain of logic, Choi, puffing at the cutie, asked why she had started helping the spearman. And more importantly, why he accepted that, quote-unquote, help. The girl's answer to the second question was simple. She volunteered to act as the guide the hero needed, unfamiliar with the new order. As for the first question, the beauty also lost her family and was glad to help with the revenge in any way she could. True, in practice, it turned out to be quite a burden. After hearing this, Jung-wook confirmed that the restored government and this hero did indeed share the same goals, and they could help him. What greatly inspired Soo-min. But the man asked the girl not to celebrate for no reason. Because they're not exactly eager to get involved in this risky venture. At least until the spearman proves he can follow the rules and the laws. Soo-min didn't understand what it meant. But Jung-wook finished her off by unleashing a barrage of simple questions. How much did the girl trust this hero? What caused that trust? Did she know anything about the spearman? Did you know what he was thinking? Is he strong enough to face the sword hero? Was Soo-min 100% sure that the hero of the uprising wouldn't switch sides? And most importantly, what will he do if he kills the sword hero? Of course, Soo-min had no answer to any of these questions. Despite rumors spreading among the public that a hero has emerged who stands with ordinary people, that alone is not a reason for the government to trust him. Because trust like that is built only on hope and faith. When it comes to Korea's survival as a nation, that isn't enough. That's why the government wants to either kill the threat while it still can, or detain it. After hearing that monologue, Soo-min realized she'd been wrong to ask the hero to hold back. 3 days later. Jong-soo had been sitting tied up in the interrogation room all this time, and his patience was starting to run out. If the girl in the jacket hadn't told him to stay calm, he'd have run away a long time ago. She was saying something about fear. It's hard to understand the fear of people trying to starve a potential ally. Suddenly, sounds of a struggle and gunfire came from outside, and then the door flew open, the hero's handcuffs and blindfold were removed. Jong-soo saw a conductor in front of him and some Captain Korea in tights. The muscular blonde guy said he was glad to meet the hero everyone's talking about. Well, I should probably introduce myself. I'm the hero with the steel hand, here to save you. Soo-min, while untying Jong-soo, said the restored government never intended to form any alliances in the first place. But the Iron Hand showed up just in time. The blonde guy, laughing like an idiot, joked that the government never helps anyone. And most likely, she planned to sort of kill the hero of the uprising. Soo-min admitted she was wrong to trust them. If it weren't for the Iron Hand, then... Jong-soo didn't let her finish, calmly tore free of the bindings, and summoned a weapon that appeared like Thor's Mjolnir.
Enough. I'm done with this nonsense.
Soo-min asked him not to fight with the steel arm, because he had saved her. However, Jong-soo grabbed his guide by the head and lifted her off the ground. So you want to take revenge on the heroes? I never doubted that you and I had the same goal. And you trusted some freak because he killed a couple of people? Wait, it seems there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Not all heroes are jerks, we just were born in the wrong era.
Shut your mouth.
I don't give a damn. Is this a misunderstanding or a mistake? If you haven't tried to kill the sword hero or his lackeys, you're my enemy. Anyone who crosses the line and abandons their humanity will die by my spear. The spearman let the conductor go, saying their contract was terminated, and ordered them to get out before she got hurt. And then Su Min shouted that it was time to stop this farce before he killed Steel Arm. At that very second in the interrogation room, Jung Wook slowly appeared and said that Jung Soo had passed the check. Actually, 3 days ago, Su Min's interrogation didn't end with a statement that they were planning to kill the rebellion's hero. John Wook understood that the girl's plan was fairly simple. You need to take one hero and make him kill his own kind. But like Frodo, who also thought he'd carry the ring without much trouble, in the real world, things are a little more complicated. However, letting such a strong hero slip through our fingers is not an option either. If the spearman had killed one, that could have been written off as a fluke. But 2 in a row, that's already telling. Choi wanted to pull off his own little scheme. There was only one problem. Old farts in power who'd rather have safety than fight for freedom. The higher-ups who were just watching this conversation would definitely want to choose the path that saves their own asses. But one of them suggested they see what Choi was planning. His methods are unconventional, but they almost always work. Even the chief himself didn't even wait to see whether they'd give him a ban or not. And I suggested to the girl that we put on a little show. Su Min apologized to Jong Soo for this circus, but there was no other way to prove the sincerity of his intentions. Actually, the guy in tights is just an actor who almost wet his pants in this little performance. So, Jung Wook asked the hero to lower his spear. Then Jong Soo asked what they would have done if he had listened to his guide and been friendly to Steel Arm. The head of the hero suppression department replied that the guy would have died instantly. The table in the interrogation room was rigged better than the bomb site on Dust. Outside, a whole bunch of soldiers were waiting, ready to shoot to kill. And if that hadn't worked, there was a backup plan, to blow up the entire building with the hero inside and bury him alive. The lives of a few soldiers are nothing compared to saving the restored government and killing a powerful enemy. Willingness to make human sacrifices proved that this organization was full of lunatics. But it was exactly that convinced Jong Soo that they could work together. So, following the proverb, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, Jong Soo and Jong Wook decided to work together. Then they went down in elevator B12 and found themselves in the underground city. Su Min couldn't believe that the rumors about the underground refuge were true. Could it be that the story about the giant robot Taekwon under the parliament building isn't a joke? Jung Wook confirmed that Taekwon was activated right after the sword hero appeared, but unfortunately he lost.
No way, really? Of course not.
Chui often says he can't make jokes. In any case, the belt-wearing suicide bomber leader said that this place used to be a bomb shelter, built back during the Cold War. But the government modernized it and turned it into a small town with a population of just 50,000. However, even in such a secret place, rumors spread about the hero of the uprising, who kills evil heroes. People joyfully welcomed the spearmen coming down to them, and John Wook asked that the hopes of these people not be destroyed. If there's still even a bit of humanity left in Jong Soo, then he should be fighting not to kill the enemy, but to protect ordinary people. When they stepped out of the elevator, one little girl bravely approached the spear fighter and handed him a bouquet of flowers, then happily ran back to her parents. That girl was about the same age as Jung Soo's sister when. It doesn't matter. Memories made the hero wonder whether he still had anything left to protect. After some time, Jung Wook escorted the hero and his companion to one of the houses and tossed them a key card. The big boss decided to set up the couple's apartment. Of course, Jong Soo didn't like the idea of staying in the city while the heroes were causing chaos. But So Min asked to give the government a little time to prepare a plan. Choi jumped into the conversation. By now, they're already figuring out how many soldiers and how much equipment they can spare to escort the hero. The conductor drew the spearman's attention back to herself. Of course, she understood that a guy this cool and kind would be repelled by the idea of help from ordinary people, but she asked him to give himself a chance to rest and trust others.
At least for one night. And Jung Soo agreed.
After a couple of hours, the beauty came out after a very long shower and found that the spearman was sitting on the balcony, gazing thoughtfully into the distance. He's holding a can, but not beer, canned peaches. Su-min asked whether all the heroes who give hope to millions of people like sweets. But Jong-soo dryly replied that sweets have a positive effect on brain productivity. And right now, he's thinking about just how thoroughly, and in what positions, he'll bend the hero of the sword over. The beauty decided to drop this gachi-muchi theme and asked Jong-soo to tell us about himself. The guy got a little angry because he thought the conductor still didn't trust him. But of course he was wrong. They just don't even really know each other, and since the road ahead is long, Su-ming would rather not be just a girl in a jacket. And look what that blockhead did to her face.
An apology wouldn't hurt.
Hearing this and realizing he hadn't exactly been very polite, the hero introduced himself. So did the girl. Starting over from scratch, they talked heart to heart. For the first and last time. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the restored government, John UK was eavesdropping on their conversation, still not fully trusting the hero of the uprising. But all the data we had suggested that he really was on the side of the people. Now, with Jong-soo, the number of heroes on the government side has increased to 3. The golem and the sea dragon were taken out of the game. That means there were 7 more against them, including the sword hero. First, we need to remove at least 2 more enemy pieces from the board. And then they can count on roughly equal forces.
And peaceful, calm times.
One of the girls couldn't hold back her emotions. She was moved by the fact that ordinary people were able to, in some way, influence the coming of peace in the war between the heroes. But Jong UK knew this was only the beginning. And you don't win wars on hope alone. There was still a lot of hard work ahead. That evening, many people, like the hero of the uprising, allowed themselves to relax a little and congratulate one another on the fact that their efforts would soon bear fruit. And no one could imagine how grim the future had in store for them. Suddenly, the entire bunker for 50,000 people trembled as if from a seismic jolt. No one understood what was happening, and Jong-wook, rushing to the window, saw that their location had been exposed. The Earth's crust, which served as the shelter's ceiling, split apart, raining debris down on the civilians. And the next moment, like vengeful gods descended from heaven, the heroes began to come down, among whom Jong-soo saw his greatest enemy. Right after Min-soo landed a guy with demonic wings woven from crimson liquid.
This is the blood hero, Hong Waran.
Baek Hae-na, the heroine of Vera, had already tried to imagine how long she would stay in her flock. The pink cutie Ma Yi-rin, the heroine of magic, threatened not to use that disgusting power in front of her, or the girl would puke.
John E-ho.
The real Steel Fist was inspired by a spat between ladies. The return hero, Sun Jun-won, who broke into a sweat while getting around the security system, didn't hear a single word of thanks. Meanwhile, the hero of perfection, Cheon Ji-song, kept silent as usual. The transformation hero Lee Ga-ram was waiting for orders from their commander. Instead of the sword hero, Sun Jun answered. Because from one glance at the leader, it was already clear that he wanted everyone in this city to feel real sorrow. The transformation hero immediately took on an attacking form, lifting only 13% of the restrictions on his power, and unleashed his most powerful volley at the civilians before him. Jong-wook, seeing this, ordered all interception systems and cannon emplacements activated. But no one was listening to him anymore, because thanks to the heroine Hannah's power, everyone in the command center instantly believed, thereby depriving the secret base of any chance to defend itself. After locking himself away from the believers, who were very insistent on telling about their lord, Jong UK ordered the ironclads, bats, and crows to attack the heroes at once and defend the city at all costs. But the dying soldier could no longer answer, and Steel Fist answered for him, having already destroyed an armored division to bring justice aboard the battleship. In the headquarters building, Sun Jun admired the bat unit. Those guys even managed to kill him a couple of times, and the Kvoran, floating in the sky with blood magic, was just finishing off the helicopter regiment of ravens at that moment. So, in just 3 minutes, a few heroes, without really breaking a sweat, killed more than 13,000 people. Then suddenly, a shining spear shot toward Min-soo. The Murim warrior reacted first and put up a block against the demon caster, using it to deflect the most powerful strike. The spear pierced the neighboring building, and blood appeared on the hand of the hero of perfection. At last, Chun Su found that bastard. The sword hero immediately understood that the attacker was the one who had tried to destroy his realm of eternal sorrow. And Chun Su could only think of one thing. Everyone in his family, everyone the guy once knew. The whole familiar world was destroyed by the man standing in front of him.
So, where should we start? From the hands or the feet? No, first we need to win at least.
But that bastard will definitely die. With these thoughts, the hero of the uprising called for his spears. Protective, Ankil, Earth, Yua, Star, Palu, Demonic, Daryl, Fiery, Ignita and Ice, Vassans, Poisonous, Barbaric, Shattered and Dragon. Chun Su had been preparing for this moment for a very long time, very carefully.
And Min Su?
He kind of didn't care. Grandpa Insight calmly summoned his sword. Using a combination of demonic and stellar power, the rebellion hero unleashed a ferocious storm toward his opponent. But a believing Muramovite stepped in to defend him. Chun Su's attack split in two and left huge furrows in the ground. At the center of the beam stood the unharmed sword hero and the hero of perfection. Only Vera's legs were left from the heroine. Looking at the demolished buildings, the transformation hero acknowledged the enemy's strength. And Vera's character, gradually recovering thanks to her own. Vera noted that the upcoming battle promises to be
quite a spectacle.
The Muramovit asked her to step aside so she wouldn't get in the way. After that, the enemies prepared for a fair duel. Chun Su made the first attack, but missed his opponent. However, the spear stuck into the back of the hero's sword began to emit a deadly poison. Blood poured from all the holes in Min Su's face. And with one sweep, he drove away the poisonous cloud. But right at that moment, an enraged opponent appeared before him. Kim Min Su had long yearned to end his suffering in this world. Dying at the hands of someone whose eyes were filled with deep sorrow.
Just like him.
But then the sword hero noticed something else in his would-be killer's gaze. In eyes overflowing with a desire for murder and revenge, there still flickered a bright hope of salvation.
Kim Min Su thought.
So he wants to kill me to find salvation? Will my destruction be a happy ending for him? I won't let you be happier than me. With these thoughts, he called out to Duran. The blade filled with Daidenzaid power and clashed with the vengeful spears. When the weapons crossed, they unleashed a shockwave of incredible force, destroying an entire block. And when the haze settled, both heroes were lying on the edges of the crater left by the explosion. Each of them remembered what he had lost. Each of them remembered what world they had come back to, and how they had been treated. Everyone remembered what they had to give up. Zhang Su was going to kill his enemy, no matter the cost, and summoned demonic armor. Min Su, in response, summoned Seraphim's armor. But the outcome of this battle was decided not by armor, not by the power of their weapons or their skill. In this, they were almost equal. The only difference was which of them hated more. Zhang Su took on a demon-like form, and he hated one person. Or Min Su in shining armor, who hated everyone. So, two different hatreds clashed in an even fight. Each of the heroes was incredibly strong. So strong that he was no less than the other. And yet every lunge made the hearts of everyone watching this battle skip a beat. It was hard to believe that someone was opposing the sword hero, who always wiped out his opponents in mere moments. And with each second that this battle went on, the seeds of hope grew more and more in people's hearts. With such a strong hero, we have a chance. That was the thought that flashed through the minds of everyone watching the battle. Meanwhile, Jung Wook, with his squad untouched by the power of faith, marched to his final battle. He told everyone that the hero of the uprising is Korea's last hope. Right now, everyone has to do everything they can to draw the other hero's attention to themselves. No matter how many lives it costs. At that moment, as he spoke, a truly heretical eldritch horror appeared before John UK. And judging by the fact that this monster tried to speak, it became clear whose power this was, the heroine of faith. But even with the creature's appearance, Jong-wook didn't flinch and joined the fight. By then, the Iron Fist had already taken out a bunch of soldiers with his bare hands. And he got so interested in the fun happening somewhere nearby that he started thinking about joining in. Just at that moment, a flare round tore through the big guy's back. The brave soldier won't let anyone stop the rebel hero. However, for the giant, that explosion was nothing more than a pebble to an elephant. Despite this, the surviving soldier wasn't about to back down and kept firing at the hero, whose bullets bounced off. At the same time, Hwaran, floating in the sky, didn't understand why the sword hero was dragging out this battle. Nada the vampire decided to step in and help dead Insadike. However, into it flew right away. Rock? Ordinary people, having climbed onto the roofs, started pummeling the ghoul not only with debris, but with insults too. For some reason, the last shout offering a meal of shit pissed the vampire off especially hard, which is why he decided to deal with these little bugs first. Elsewhere, one of the killers managed not only to regain consciousness, but also to sneak up behind the hero of the return, catching him off guard. At the same time, on the streets, hastily improvised Molotov cocktails flew at a pathetic Iron Man imitation, while Jung-wook, trapped in the monster's claws, fought to the very end. At that moment, every last one of them was filled with the resolve they had long forgotten, the kind the hero of the uprising had taught them once again. And right now, this guy took a shot to the body and flew back. Then he used an earth spear, hurling it at the freak, but the guy easily deflected the attack. Of course, that was also a decoy. After plunging into the ground, the earth element turned the area into quicksand, holding Minsu in place. Then came the dragon spear, which in that moment, summoned a vengeful spirit that struck down the immobilized sword hero. The next weapon and the final push. Jong-soo waited for this moment all year. All his torment and suffering brought him here. Having activated all the available elements at once, the hero of the rebellion used the elemental fusion technique and put everything into the final crushing attack. But, you're strong but no more than that. Duran's sword. Dawn mode. An incredibly powerful slash, blazing with overwhelming light, came down on Jong-soo, and he couldn't fully dodge it. A guy had his arm cut off, and the residual light damaged the rest of his body, piercing him to the bone. And as the hero of the uprising fell, Minsu tossed out one last dramatic line, that the spearman's grief wasn't strong enough. Not strong enough? The wound on his hand was wrapped in dark energy, which stopped the bleeding. Is my sorrow not strong enough? 1 year ago, he lost his entire family, and the world he knew turned to ruins. And all of this happened because of the whim of one damn loser who got a power he didn't deserve. And now this bastard says Jong-soo's grief isn't strong enough? The spearman let out a howl, filled with rage, then charged into the attack, despite having no weapon or arm. Minsu wasn't too surprised, and easily dodged the furious lunge, shattering the helmet of the hero of the rebellion. The sword hero believed there was no one more miserable than himself. The next blow from Minsu shattered the armor of the rebellion hero. All of this is pointless. Finally, the bastard kicked Jong-soo hard, and he went flying into the wall. So you blame everyone for your misery? Minsu slowly walked up to the spearman, and when he asked exactly what he had done to the swordsman, the bastard grabbed his opponent by the head and starting to beat Jong-soo, said that they were all happy. No one waited for Minsu, and no one tried to understand or support him. This is humanity's fault. And the spearman's fault is that he dared to give others hope. Suddenly, the sword hero sharply darted aside, dodging the bullet So Min fired. Yeah, the bastard's right. Jong-soo is their last hope. Minsu asked not to believe in this weak hero, just as not to believe that a pistol could hurt him in any way. Of course, the beauty understood she couldn't kill that bastard. But someday, if all people unite against him, sooner or later the day will come when the hero of the sword falls. At that moment in the narrow tunnel, filled with bloody chunks, the sound of a radio crackled, heard by Jung Wook with his arm torn off. After picking up a radio, he turned to his subordinate and asked him to broadcast his words throughout the entire shelter. Through the underground city, a fading voice rang out, addressing everyone who was still alive and able to fight. Jong Wook plainly declared that if the hero of the uprising dies now, the people will never be free. The army ended up defeated, and there was almost no weaponry left. Jong Uk knew he had nothing to offer people to give them hope, but if they didn't help the hero of the uprising now, then by doing nothing, they'd be digging a grave for all of humanity. After lighting a cigarette, the head of the anti-hero division pulled his last ace from his sleeve. And remembering the heroine in armor, he blew up the tower where the headquarters of the restored government was located. Watching the building fall right onto Minsu, Vera's heroine even got a little angry. This resistance is so annoying. Maybe the dear acolytes want to prove their faith? Well, what are they willing to give up? The two little idiots happily raised a hand, which in that same instant turned into a bloody pulp. This sacrifice summoned energy hands that stopped the building from falling. But that wasn't what Minsu was worried about at all right now. He turned to the girl who had the nerve to fire. And there, he saw the magic heroine standing up to protect the human. The beauty's already sick of acting like she's as crazy as everyone else. Threatening to finish off that sick bastard, the heroine unleashed a sweet storm from her staff. Irim was heading home, talking about her little sister's upcoming birthday celebration. Then I suddenly found out that Mom had bought a cake too. Stunned by the news, the girl stood rooted to the spot and began to wonder whether she would make it back to the store with her cake. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the warning shout. But when the poor thing looked up, it was already too late. Isekai fridge did its job. The following year passed just like it did for all the heroes, and when the girl returned to her world, she found it engulfed in the flames of someone's hatred. At that time, heroes had only just begun to return, and they split into two camps, those who tried to resist that hatred, and those who gave themselves over to it completely. Aram was neither brave nor decisive, and on top of all her flaws, she had something to lose, so she gave up heroic deeds and focused only on her family, hiding like the other refugees. They wandered across the country in hopeless search of a place where there was no devastation, until one day the military appeared. Faceless soldiers, following orders, had to find Yerim and escort her to meet with Jong Wook, who instead of devising a multi-step plan, simply said outright that he knew Yerim's secret. The girl tried to deny everything, but the head of the unit had a full file on her. The beauty disappeared for a whole year, then came back like nothing had happened. About the same time as the other heroes. Basically, their story is about the same. Of course, Aram didn't see anything in it that could prove her involvement with those psychos. Or does anyone who runs away from home these days automatically end up in another world? Jonik agreed that this was a stretch, but he wasn't stupid, so he found other evidence too. A couple of weeks ago, their troops got the wrong target. Their attack was supposed to hit the area where the refugees were hiding. However, an unknown person, using power very similar to the hero's power, deflected that attack, and then vanished without a trace. The only one who came out of the building where the hero was that same girl now standing in front of him. Aram once again started denying all this absurd, far-fetched nonsense. But Jung Wook pointed the gun at the poor girl before she could even finish her sentence. He cocked the hammer and pulled the trigger. Magic filled the gloomy basement, and the ordinary girl instantly turned into a heroine from the pages of a teen manhwa. Of course, Jung Uk was actually firing blanks, but with one empty shot, he caught a whole magician. After a brief talk, Aram stopped denying everything and tried to explain to the government representative why it had been kept hidden. The thing is, there was a big difference in power between all the heroes, which was usually determined by the demon's strength in the world, weakening where the hero was sent. And if Yerim had to defeat the biscuit monster, then the demon slain by the sword hero was truly a terrifying creature. It's easy to reach that conclusion, since all the heroes who died at Kim Min-soo's hands were stronger than the demons from the worlds that were dropped in. In general, Aram was trying to say that the government is fighting someone who just can't be defeated. One Wook shamed the heroine and reminded her of the people living in this nightmare. For example, the Yerim family, whom the heroine condemns to such an existence by refusing to fight. The girl already understood that, but she had no chance. If she goes against the sword hero, she'll just die and won't be able to care for her mom or her sister anymore. Compared to the other heroes who protected people, Yerim was just an ordinary coward. With a dramatic cigarette, Jae-wook said that you don't have to sacrifice yourself to fight for freedom. He offered the heroine a chance to become the sword hero's follower. Because there's no way to know for 100% when the time traveler came back. The girl will just say she just showed up and decided to join the maniacs. We just need to make a little noise to make it convincing. They immediately handed Yerim the papers showing the location of the military base, which the government had already intended to get rid of. She can destroy this structure and earn the trust of the hero's followers, who will gladly welcome a newcomer into their ranks. By the way, if Yerim agrees to this, then Jong UK will assign security for the girl's family, move them abroad, and provide the best conditions for living. But even so, the cutie was still scared. There was nothing she could do about the sword hero. Even if she catches him drunk on the toilet, she'd barely be able to scratch him. But Jungwook never asked for anything like that. All it took was to be an ace up the sleeve, to play at the most important moment. And that moment came today. Jung UK died, and the resurrected hero was on the brink of death. Then Irem felt she couldn't take it anymore, and gathering all her courage, she attacked the sword hero. To my surprise, her strength turned out not to be as insignificant as she thought. Meanwhile, Jung-soo, on the brink of death, remembered how hard it had been for him at the very beginning. I remembered how many times he had passed out from exhaustion, and how many times he had already been here, on the brink of death. I remembered how many serious wounds he got over his whole career destroying monsters. The young man was able to achieve these results through intense training, which he never gave up because he remembered his family, who had died. But now it seemed that all of it had been in vain. He couldn't neither get revenge nor even protect anyone. Neither the legendary weapon nor the demon's power was enough to win. And now the black hole lurking inside him since his family's death had begun to drag the boy's soul into the depths of despair. For the past year, Jong-soo had constantly pushed beyond his own limits, growing stronger and stronger. But all he managed to achieve was just a few drops of the enemy's blood. There was no hope now. And all that was left was to end all this as soon as possible, so as to at least retain the right to one's own death. With my tongue out, apologizing to everyone I knew and met in this life. Jong-soo clenched his teeth as hard as he could. But Salmon dug her fingers in, smiling through tears as she begged him not to die. In the next moment, Aram was beside the hero of the uprising, and without another word she grabbed him and flew upward, leaving behind the ordinary girl who had kept the hopeless boy from ending his life. Despite her cute looks, Yerim swore like a sailor as she dragged the heavy hero toward the exit. But a transformer noticed them. Quickly taking control of the alert system, he boomed through the entire shelter that the magical heroine had betrayed them and was trying to escape with the spearman. In the next moment, he summoned a bunch of cannons and, locking onto his target, fired dozens of missiles, which the pink-haired girl had to dodge, but dodging everything was simply impossible. For this kind of thing, she had a strange protective magic in the shape of a little cat, and still, the other heroes were already hot on her heels. A Murim warrior, bouncing off the houses with ease, quickly caught up to the fugitive, but when he got right next to her, a soldier jumped out of the nearest window. He was an ordinary soldier, and the heroes didn't understand what he was up to. Swiftly flying between the magic heroine and the pursuer, the smiling guy locked eyes with a barely alive hero of the rebellion and wished him to survive, then blew himself up, forcing the pursuer to pull back and hang by one of the windows. At that same moment, more soldiers emerged from the building, reaching out with their hands. They won't let the freak go any farther. The fearless fighters blew themselves up along with the Muramovits. The debris from the collapsed buildings distracted Steel Fist, who didn't notice the speeding bus until too late. Of course, an ordinary person could do nothing against the hero who tore a bus in half with his bare hands, but by doing that, the brave man distracted the overconfident strongman, and another truck was already closing in on him. A Steel Fist stopped the car with one blow, but explosives flew out of it, showering not Homelander. Seeing this, the smug soldier pulled out a detonator and with one final dramatic line, said, blew himself up with the bastard. Under the cover of ordinary people, the magic heroine desperately tried to save the man who had planted hope in their hearts. But the pursuers didn't let up. The blood hero tried to reason with the girl, because she wouldn't be able to escape them. After that, he cut his palm with a knife. Blood burst from his hand and took the shape of a bow, from which the ghoul fired huge arrows, trying to knock Aram down. The girl had to dodge them, even though the opening in the shelter ceiling was right nearby. Actually, she was pretty lucky, because Vera's character was busy healing Minsu. Aram understood that she needed to run now, before the others recovered their strength, but the blood hero kept hurling huge arrows at her. Suddenly the girl noticed the direction. With turbo mode activated on her pink wings, the magic heroine trusted the human and headed in the indicated direction. The decline, in turn, also accelerated. They were being led to the elevator up to the surface, where a whole crowd of refugees had gathered. People tried to get out by pushing forward in line, but aside from the fact that the elevator had a technical limit on how many people it could carry, management had its own plans. The last surviving government official ordered all remaining soldiers to gather by this elevator and report the situation. She was immediately informed that 3 pursuers wanted to stop the heroine of magic, who was trying to lead the defeated hero of the rebellion out of the shelter. Right now, government agents are guiding her and leading her to the elevator, but there are too many people waiting their turn to board, so this could be dangerous. A government woman said she'd handle it and picked up the megaphone. She plainly and without hiding anything told people that this was the last working elevator. There's one landing left, after which they'll shut it down so the 2 heroes can get out. As expected, the crowd went wild. If they don't have superpowers, then what? Can we just screw off their lives? But the woman had an answer for that. Anyone who escapes upstairs will save their lives for a couple of weeks, but no one will protect them there. However, right now, each of the people gathered by the elevator can make sure their deaths are not in vain. If the hero of the uprising survives and escapes, then it won't be an outright victory for the sword hero. Humanity will have a chance to defeat that bastard in the future. Moved by the speech, one of the men in the elevator stepped forward and approached the woman with the baby. He suddenly wanted to trade places with that child. When the boy got on the elevator, the other men got off too and gave up their seats to women, the elderly, and children. A few minutes later, behind the barricades, they armed themselves with whatever they could, waiting for the decisive moment. Suddenly, a pink flash swept over them. Hardly glancing down, Aram understood everything at once, and her heart clenched. She apologized to the people who had chosen to sacrifice their lives and got into the elevator. After that, all 3,000 people who were the last survivors in the shelter were able to hold the heroes back for about 5 minutes. And those 5 minutes gave Yerim time to break away from the pursuit and hide on the uninhabited islands of Indonesia. So 50,000 people who were in Korea's last refuge died. But at the cost of their lives, they managed to save one person, whom the druid heroine met. U.S. White House. The president heard a report that the South Korean government had stopped responding. According to the latest data, they had 7,000 soldiers and several tens of thousands of civilians in the shelter. But based on the available data, we can conclude that all these people died. However, Mr. President was only worried about the money invested in arming the Korean government to build a defense system against the heroes who, 8 of them, stormed the secret underground shelter and destroyed it in a matter of minutes. But the most surprising thing was that inside the shelter was a 9th hero, who stood up against the Sword Hero terrorist group. The sight of Jong-soo's demonic armor silenced all the big shots in the White House. The agent sent this video from the scene, risking his life. Someone suggested that this video was generated, but experts have already checked it and confirmed it's authentic. Then the president asked where this unknown hero was now. On the deserted islands, Druid could barely breathe. She had to drag a big guy on her own back. Exhausted Aram was also on the verge of fainting, and the spear hero still hadn't come to it all. Carefully laying the guests down in the middle of the forest, the druid thrust a small seed into the ground, and it immediately began to grow, wrapping around those in need of help. Soon, the branches beneath the heroes intertwined into a bed, and to top it all off, bright healing lights appeared. When he came to, Jong-soo asked the stranger why she was helping a weakling who had lost to the sword hero and couldn't protect anyone. Jong-soo couldn't protect those people either, none of the people who fought. And the second the guy started sniveling, he got a slap from the hottie. How dare that blockhead say that? It wasn't Jong-soo who couldn't protect those people, they protected that self-flagellating fool. Hearing that, the boy seemed to feel the presence of the souls of the people who had given their lives for him.
No, he even saw his guide.
Seeing the sorrow of loss, the druid cried, because she too had lost people dear to her. At the White House, the president was informed that an unknown spearman, who had risen up against the hero of the sword, is now in Indonesia. They'll be able to say more exactly when their troops arrive on site. By the way, according to one of the generals, there were about 5 million refugees from Korea in their country at the moment. Soon, the whole world will be talking only about these heroes destroying an entire state. The president understood that this incident couldn't be covered up. But the concerns and feelings of American citizens weren't what worried the advisor. Soon, weak states will panic, and the UN will turn into a circus, demanding that these heroes be wiped off the face of the earth. Therefore, in the opinion of everyone gathered in this office, Mr. President must be as decisive as possible. The blonde man jumped up, protesting the deployment of troops into a sovereign country, because such actions would seriously hurt his approval rating. But the generals and advisors reminded him that there was no longer a country called South Korea on the planet. There are only terrorists, and they're all gathered right now in one known place to use next-generation nuclear weapons.
Mace of God.
Just a couple of hours later, the satellite operator received a message. Yes, understood. The team got wary. What did management say? Target coordinates 10, 85, 27, 695. In the shelter, where there were only the dead, one of the government agents somehow survived by a miracle. Now, with shaking hands, he aimed the rifle at the hero in white armor. Kim Min-soo seemed glad that at least someone survived. He wanted this man to tell others that the spear hero was dead, and that the same would happen to anyone who dared to give people hope. From the survivor's eyes, tears streamed down, but fear quickly turned into madness mixed with hope. You're scared, aren't you? Will this spear hero return? You think people will keep hoping and fight you, huh?
What a relief. So, you're not a god.
You're a person just like us. Even when the agent's head flew off his shoulders, the smile never left his face. Song Joon apologized for interrupting Min-soo, but he came to report that they had finished with the dungeon and wiped out every last person. The heroine of faith asked not to distract their leader, who has the right to take out his anger on people for as long as he wants. The rest of the fist, as usual, rejoiced at the triumph of justice. Min-soo understood that all these sycophants were no different from ordinary people who knew nothing about his feelings. Nevertheless, the returning hero was only interested in their next destination. The Korean government has been completely destroyed, along with almost the entire population. And Lee Sung-joon couldn't wait to find out what their leader's next move would be. Min-soo said they had to track down the spear hero. Obviously, just by existing, he'll inspire hope in people's hearts, until those bastards see his mangled corpse. The hero of the return was very interested, not worried about the war to the whole world. Meanwhile, the US president addressed reporters, telling the whole world that South Korea had been completely destroyed by terrorists calling themselves heroes. For the protection of the weak, the maintenance of world peace, and this time, even not for the democratic seizure of oil, but for the memory of the dead, America decided to take extreme measures. To be more precise, once again drop an atomic bomb on Asia. All of Min-soo's followers were watching this live broadcast. The transformation hero reported that he detected warheads headed their way. There were about 2 minutes left before impact. Muramovitz immediately understood that the shells couldn't be shot down anymore, and Upal went after the transformer in charge of air defense, but bombs dropped from space can't be detected in advance. And besides, it seems the US concealed the launch code's transfer until the very last moment.
The Steel Fist laughed.
There was nothing to worry about, since they had a reset button in the form of a return hero. He'll bounce back real quick and handle everything. However, before the restart, Sun Jun decided to confirm Kim Min-soo's plan after all, because up to this point they had just been sitting on their own, so was the sword hero ready to go against the whole world? Min-soo replied that he hadn't planned to do it in the first place, but anyone who stood in the way of the kingdom of sorrow automatically became his enemy. The comeback hero set this up. So, when he returns, the League of Injustice will all happily start twisting the whole world's balls. The Transformer asked to be warned first thing that the bombs would be dropped from space. Then he can hack into the satellite system ahead of time, and Vera's heroine settled in comfortably to get a better look at the fireworks. The other characters followed her lead. When the rockets shot through the hole in the ceiling of the underground refuge city and the heroes saw a bright light, Sun-ju called out to Min-soo. The guy looked at his henchman with an indifferent gaze. And the return hero said with a smile that after the reset, the swordsman still wouldn't remember anything.